Grand Theft Auto Trilogy Definitive Edition, a launch so disastrous that it may very well have changed the course of Rockstar's plans with future remaster or remake projects. You'll see right here the PC version of the Definitive Edition. You can see the Metascore is at a low 49% from 8 critics, but the user score is especially low at a 0.6, and the other versions of the game aren't faring much better. The PlayStation 5 version, which was the most reviewed, is sitting at a 54% from 46 critics, a 0.9 user score. This is the Xbox version, not looking much better. Same with the Switch version, which actually in many ways is worse because the performance on the Switch version is just so atrocious. I'm not sure if they've fixed that yet, but at launch, at the very least, it was certainly far from ideal. And Grand Theft Auto Trilogy Definitive Edition is sitting currently in the top 5 worst user-rated games of all time on Metacritic if you ignore the duplicates. With the duplicates, you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th place. But if you ignore the duplicates, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It is the 5th worst user-rated game of all time still today. The launch state of that game was nothing short of a travesty, and while updates did eventually address some of that stuff, there are still aspects of the game that are still far from ideal. Some people are debating whether the visual changes that they made in terms of the art style and art direction is actually something positive. It looks more Sims and cartoony-like, and beyond that, it's the mobile port, which as many fans have highlighted, is in some ways inferior to just the classic versions, with bugs and issues from the mobile versions making their way into the so-called Definitive Edition. And so the reception surrounding this game was just incredibly negative, overwhelmingly so, to the point where, according to Tez 2, he's heard from a reliable source that remasters of Grand Theft Auto 4 and Red Dead Redemption were on the table a few years ago, but Rockstar chose not to proceed with the projects in mind. The poor reception of the Trilogy Definitive Edition might be a reason behind that decision. Now, there were those who were skeptical as to whether this is a rumor that can be trusted, but then news outlet Kotaku came out and actually corroborated Tez 2's tweet in an article titled Red Dead Redemption GTA 4 Remaster Shelved After GTA Trilogy Debacle. Sources tell Kotaku that Rockstar is focused on GTA 6 and not the past for now. Kotaku can confirm via its own sources that Rockstar Games is currently focused on developing Grand Theft Auto 6 and has shelved all remakes following the poor reception of Grand Theft Auto The Trilogy Definitive Edition. I can confirm that Tez's tweet is accurate and lines up with what I've been told. So when multiple sources are relaying the same thing, echoing the same thing, and the rumors are lining up like this, it tends to be that there is validity. Kotaku continues, the publisher's hoping that folks will forget all about the critically panned and botched classic GTA remasters. I don't think we'll forget about that anytime soon. While we certainly hope that when Rockstar decides to revisit plans for remasters or remakes for Grand Theft Auto 4, Red Dead Redemption 1, that they'll look back at their past mistakes and learn from them, we certainly will remember this, and people will have the right to be skeptical based on what happened with the Trilogy Definitive Edition. But yeah, they want to let these plans marinate for a while longer while they focus most of their resources and energy on their next big game, Grand Theft Auto 6. Honestly, that's probably for the best. It's been almost a decade since the launch of Grand Theft Auto 5. A Grand Theft Auto 6 is long overdue, not to mention that optics surrounding the prospect of Rockstar creating a GTA 4 or Red Dead Redemption 1 remaster or remake are looking pretty negative considering what happened. Kotaku does emphasize that a Red Dead Redemption and GTA 4 remaster aren't entirely out of scope and could still happen in the future after GTA 6 ships. Honestly, that'd be a better time to do remasters or remakes of these games. By the time GTA 6 ships, these games will actually be pretty damn old at that point, and it'll feel more justified to do a remaster or remake as long as that's executed properly, as long as this doesn't become another Trilogy Definitive Edition debacle. Finally, Kotaku also confirms that the idea of remastering Red Dead Redemption had been on the table for the publisher for a few years already, but now in the wake of last year's remasters flopping and demand for GTA 6 growing, the publisher has shifted plans again and is moving forward to the next big thing and not looking back, at least for the time being. For many, this will likely come as a relief because one of the worries of a potential Red Dead Redemption 1 remaster or remake or GTA 4 remaster or remake is that Rockstar will pull what they pulled with the Trilogy Definitive Edition. I'm referring to the removal of the classic versions of these games that many people consider to be superior to the so-called Definitive Edition that's far from definitive. Not to mention that the classics are more moddable and there are plenty of great mods that allow those titles to be better than what Rockstar came up with their Definitive Edition, which may very well explain why Take-Two and Rockstar went on this mod killing spree. Was almost as if they were afraid that the community efforts would be far better than the Definitive Edition, the official version's efforts, and that is what actually turned out to be the case. And the fear is that should Rockstar do a Grand Theft Auto 4 remaster or remake or a Red Dead Redemption 1 remaster or remake, they'll pull the same thing where they'll remove a superior classic version and release a botched remaster or remake that will make people miss the older classic versions. I mean, throughout Definitive Edition's launch month, you could see people worrying about the prospect of GTA 4 getting remastered or remade by Rockstar. I swear if they massacre my boy, I'm gonna lose it. Me laughing at the GTA Definitive Edition memes, realizing GTA 4 is next, oh crap. Next up, we got Let Us Pray for Nico's Face. You got the Grim Reaper here slaying San Andreas and the Trilogy Definitive Edition, and then going after GTA 4. And then here we have a render of what some fans will think the Definitive Edition of GTA 4 could look like with reinterpreted models and that more Simsified, cartoony kind of art style that isn't jiving with a lot of people. Some people straight up made a Nico-like character on Sims and joked that this is what the original is and this is what the remaster could look like. And I mean, if you look at the models of the Definitive Edition remaster and compare to the original, that's not too far off. For example, check out these two guys. This is what they look like in the original. Looks semi-realistic enough, though of course more polygonal because these are older games, but the Definitive Edition just completely botches what older consoles could do. It just makes them look incredibly weird and creepy and cartoony. Same goes for this character right here, or old Reese, who, I mean, doesn't even look anywhere close to the same. For some reason, he's been de-aged. Here we have some crazy-looking models, and alongside that, plenty of other bugged-out elements, like the fog that wasn't included in the Definitive Edition that allowed you to see very clearly into the distance. Effects like fog help with not only the atmosphere, but the sense of scale, the illusion of things being bigger than they are. AI upscaled elements like R guitars instead of air guitars. When they applied the AI upscaling, they didn't touch up the stuff that the AI missed, like a bunch of misspellings, including what was originally Shaft Hot Dogs, the taste of a real man's meat, was changed to Shaft Hot Dogs, the taste of a real man's heat, because the M was seen as an H by the AI, and just the logo itself just looks kind of worse and with less personality, more like kind of a default font than kind of this thing right here, which seems to have had more thought put into it. And then going back to character models, you could see all of the funkiness that can be found in the Definitive Edition, just completely botching the classic versions models and turning them into monstrosities that are baffling in the way they made it into the final game, in the way that this was actually released in this state just for the sake of getting it out and making the money. And that's just scratching the surface. On Reddit, you'll find plenty of bugs like the body not being modeled correctly to the clothing in the game, with CJ becoming a floating blob if you max out the fat. Here we have how the original model looked versus the Definitive Edition, how they Simsified it and just made it very creepy. And then here's a modded version that looks so freaking good. This is what the community could accomplish. Meanwhile, Rockstar, they put this out. It is pretty embarrassing, and mistakes like this where the haircut here, the buzz is just completely off. We got legs that look like these for some reason. We got rain. Oh my god. Do you remember the rain in this thing? Just completely unplayable. Just completely headache-inducing. You've got rain that just straight up goes through the roof, which seems like kind of a major oversight. It's a small thing, but these little things, it's kind of death by 1,000 cuts. They do add up. More people complaining about the lack of fog and draw distance. That makes everything look incredibly flat, lacking in atmosphere and lacking in any sort of sense of scale. Bugs like this, where you can just clip through surfaces. And I mean, you got straight up entire, compilation videos cyberpunk style parody videos that just show a series of bugs like clipping through the floor and models just bugging out. And it just... I completely forgot about that. The rain, of course. I mean, the list just goes on and on. You get the idea at this point. Crazy events happening behind the scenes. Some of this stuff is hilarious, but again, death by 1,000 cuts. This was the degree to which Take-Two and Rockstar didn't care about the quality of what should have been a very easy home run. A compilation of 3 beloved titles, make them the best they can be, and really ship them out when they're ready, and make them really feel remastered and definitive, and in some aspects remade. They failed on all fronts, and so, yeah, it's understandable that people are questioning whether GTA4 won't get botched, whether Red Dead Redemption 1 won't get botched. And then the classic versions get removed so that you're forced to play the inferior versions of those games. Ones that are less moddable at that, because they are going to be changed enough that mods will have to be repurposed for them. And even then, you never know whether those mods are going to get taken down, because Take-Two and Rockstar just hate their community, seemingly. Just completely spit on their face all the time. I'm personally okay with Rockstar not touching up GTA 4 and Red Dead Redemption 1 until much later. Or, if that never happens, I wouldn't mind that either after the definitive edition debacle. But if they can learn from their mistakes, maybe one day I'll give them the opportunity to revisit such a project. But if they botch that again, that's going to be unforgivable, especially given these two are some of the most beloved games in history. But for now, the backlash has been severe enough, the negative reception has been overwhelming enough that Rockstar has deemed it a bad idea to continue with this endeavor. It's still too soon. The wounds are still too fresh, in my opinion. But that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this. Are you disappointed that Rockstar is shelving remaster or remake projects for GTA 4 and Red Dead Redemption? Would you have preferred that to come sooner and before GTA 6? Or are you okay with them just fully prioritizing GTA 6 and for now forgoing these projects that have been seemingly years in consideration? Share your thoughts below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.